Welcome to the Resilient Recruiter podcast. This is your host, Mark Whitby, and I'm excited to be joined today by Mark Skinner. Mark is the co-founder and managing director of CSC Recruitment, a construction recruitment firm founded in 2005. CSC has 25 employees with 3 offices and specialist teams dealing with freelance, permanent, and executive search, and also a thriving international division. Mark started his recruiting career in 1998, just 1 year after me, Mark. So listen, welcome. Thanks for being here. I'm looking forward to this.
No, it's great to be here today.
Fantastic. So we have a mutual connection in Leanne Jones Hunt, and Leanne is my COO and very highly valued colleague. And I understand she placed a few people with you guys back in the day when she had a rec to rec business.
Yeah, that's correct. No, some good people, I'm glad to say.
Fantastic. She spoke really highly of you, and she was excited that we were going to be doing this. Um, and said that like the business in terms of the culture, the training and development, and the environment and everything, she felt it was a really positive place to recruit for. So she had lots of good things to say. Um, why did you? So like, s- let's go back to 2005, Mark. Why did you start your own recruitment business?
Uh, I guess for us, it's an interesting story because I certainly was never a person that wanted my own business. My first company was Hayes, FTSE 100 company at the time, big business. Like a lot of people fell into recruitment, but just really enjoyed it. Luckily, I was surrounded by some great people back then, really looked after me. I was poached by a smaller business, Hill McGlynn, which became Randstad, and enjoyed it even more. And they were the guys that I saw really trained me how to do recruitment properly, very consultative in their approach. And a lot of really good businesses have come from that business, people I used to work with. And I was going up the management chain, really enjoying it, but sometimes personality clashes. I didn't get on with my boss, and actually Tom, who ended up setting up the business with, had the same issue. And Tom got introduced to a guy through someone he knew he went to school with that wanted a construction recruitment business. So he set up this business for him. Yeah, a lot of a lot of lessons to be learned there. But he turned out not to be a good person to work for. We had the Inland Revenue phoning us because he wasn't paying our taxes. Our temps
Uh-oh.
weren't getting paid. He wasn't collecting invoices from our clients. He lived in Monaco. It was very strange. And Tom and I kind of looked at each other and said, "Well, I guess we're just going to go back and have to get normal jobs." And I was out with my father and my godfather, and he said, "Well, you're good with clients. You've kind of set up a business already. Why don't you do this for yourself?" And I said, "Well, I haven't got any money." And my dad remortgaged his small house in Wolverhampton that he had at the time. I sold my beloved Mini. We cobbled together enough money, and we wrote the gentleman we worked for some letters saying, "You've not paid our taxes. You're not doing all this. We're leaving and setting up." And there was 5 of us on day one because we'd taken, some staff had come and joined us that we used to work with. And that's how CSC was born. And I think actually when I look back now, the fact we didn't want to run a business has put us in really good stead. We had some great lessons of how not to run a business from this other guy. And actually we kind of see ourselves as employees. We've tried to create the business that we wanted to work for. All the stuff we were promised, you hear a lot in recruitment about whether it could be trips away, how you're going to structure things, paying people properly, looking after people well. Um, and that's the business we've strived to become really. And so when I left Hill McGlynn, I was only 25. When we set up CSC, I was 27. Pretty naive, I reckon, but I rated myself as a recruiter, so that bit was okay. But boy, you learn a lot of stuff about how a business is run. And luckily for us, we had a guy still works with us, still does consultancy with us today, called Anthony. He was just a godsend. He looked after everything non-recruitment, really took the pressure off Tom and I and Karen and Dave, which are the other people that set up. And let's focusing on what we're good at, which is obviously making placements and building those relationships. And I look back now and I think, cool, we were pretty lucky. It's just all those things to happen, even to the point where we didn't have much money. And I remember Anthony saying to me after a couple of months, we were 3 grand from going bust, running out of money when we started, but we hadn't noticed. And luckily, we'd just got some payments in unknowingly, and we carried on. So it could have been very, very different.
I love that story. That is a fantastic origin story, Mark. And it leads nicely into my next question, which was I believe you guys have a really above average tenure. I think the average tenure of your employees is like 8 years or something.
Yes,
Um, Go ahead.
yeah, no, it's true, and it's something we feel really, really lucky for, and actually just makes you feel really old, to be fair, because obviously I'm one of those, and it's 16, 17 years now. But yeah, it's something when you look at people say like, what do you enjoy about the job you do? And there's many aspects, but it's the people, and we've got really good people around us, people that I like spending time with, and that are good at their jobs. And, actually I look at it, although I'm lucky enough to half own the business, there's people that work for us that have done far more than I have. We've got guys that have grown teams that are brilliant, personal billings, far outstretched what I ever did. And it's a joy to work with some really, really good staff. So yeah, we try and look after them, and hopefully they stay, and develop their careers with us.
Well, let's expand on that then, because I think, look, this is really, if there is a secret to having a sustainable and profitable business that grows over time, holding on to your team members, and especially, the ones that are performing well, is, I mean, that is so important. I I know we, as recruiters, we often say to our clients, "Oh, the cost of a bad hire, and it's whatever the stat is, three and a half times the annual compensation, and so on and so forth, and plus loss of productivity, plus impact on customers as well as team members, and there's all these negatives associated with making a mishire, and that is partly what justifies using a professional recruiter who's going to help you to get this right. And yet, in our own industry, we have a very high attrition rate. There's a lot of churn, and I think this is something as an industry where we're not getting right, and yet that is such a massive drain on profitability and impediment to growth. So I would love to expand on this. How do you feel you've achieved that? Like, what do you think are the key factors that have enabled you to hold on to people and allow them to grow with you?
Well, the first thing I would say is that I've definitely done all those things. We've made loads of bad hires. The thing with us is if we hire someone either doesn't fit our culture or doesn't turn out to be the person that we thought they were, they don't stay. So I have done all those mistakes. I'm definitely not smug. I don't think I've got the magic wand that means that people will just join, be successful, and stay. But I think when you see people that do buy into your culture, do buy into your values, we seem to have done a pretty good job of looking after them well. I think one of the things about Tom and I is we don't have a lot of ego. We came from a very successful business where I distinctly remember my director, who still works within our industry, whoever just joined was going to be the next big thing. Oh, Paul's just joined. He's going to break the company record this year, and then Paul wouldn't be there in 2 weeks' time. And there was a lot of this noise that went on. And actually, Tom and I had a bit of coaching going back a few years, and actually one of the things we recognised about ourselves was we didn't praise people enough because we came from that kind of we don't want to be following their mistakes. We made different mistakes, and we set up at that time something that we call sales meetings, which is every 2 months. We take the guys to a bar around the corner in St Paul's. We put on some food and drinks, and we make sure that we communicate clearly with the company what's going on. Talk about new initiatives that we want to bring in. Great place for people to get promoted. That's where we get speeches, all that kind of stuff. Say well done. We're very good at saying well done to the newbies, especially like your first client visit, your first interview, your first deal. breaking new ground with a new client, celebrate the small successes as well as the big ones, kind of like the board. Yes, we've got people that do very impressive figures on that, but hopefully that's the glory enough with them. But what it did is it put Tom and I in a position where every 2 months we had to look and go, right, what good has been done and what can be improved. And they're fun events, and often, me being an old fart, I leave early and then I come in the next day and see some sorry looking faces there. But I think it's one of the things where we so we don't big people up, and we have a kind of a thing where if someone joins and says, I'm this, I'm that, which I get, because they might have come from another company, they might come in, with like a senior consultant title or something, and they want to show people they're good at what they do. We say, look, don't worry about telling us that you're good. If you do good things, we'll probably get around to telling you at some point. And that's kind of the way we behave. So I think that's part of it. But what? One of the things that we did a huge amount before COVID, and sadly, our only casualty, we only made one redundancy when COVID hit, which was a really lovely guy called Jamie. He was our training manager. He'd been with us for 6 years. And we hit it, and we obviously knew we weren't going to take on trainees for quite some time. We'd put a lot of effort into that training development. So again, Jamie had a program called World Class Recruitment, where he'd do workshops again every 2 months. He'd pick a topic. It could be headhunting, it could be client meetings, and he'd challenge the consultants to come up with what they thought a world-class version of that was. And then he'd get some structure after that, as far as putting that together, as far as information back to them, examples they had used, and then we'd run an incentive of it. So whoever did the most successful headhunt calls or the most client visits, whatever it was, we might do a speedboat down the Thames, or day out the cricket, or something fun, but something that we could do those things. So and it's one of the challenges we've got now, that actually we've hired quite a lot of experienced people. We've managed to pick people up off our competitors that have shut offices or just not treated people very well during COVID. But we now have that hole, that people's personal training development that we put so much time into, I'm just not doing at the moment. So that's one of the big challenges for us. But we try, I think there's a lot of things that you can talk about treating people well. And actually, I listened to one of your pods going back a few weeks with a gentleman, that a lot of the things that he talks about really kind of triggered with us. I think, and you can correct me, he had a thing about care. I think they had it behind
yeah. So that's Simon LaFosse.
Yeah, really enjoyed that one, and we don't have that slogan behind our reception, but we could do. We've gone on those journey with our staff with mental health. We support people with obviously healthcare. We encourage people when they need it to get that, but also people often come to us in a place where they've got pre-existing conditions and the healthcare doesn't cover it, and we pay for that for ourselves. So and it's a difficult subject to talk to people about, and sometimes I almost feel like I encourage a bit too hard for people to get help. But we've had, luckily, so many great experience when people have gone and get counselling or cognitive behavioural therapy and come out the other side in a much better place. That it's just something we like to do. So we look at, if you take people on, if people, as you say, have been here on average over 8 years, you get to know them pretty well inside and out, and you know what goes on outside work as well as work. And we all know, if you're happy outside work, it only improves what you do here. So hopefully those are a few of the things that we've done.
You might remember back in episode 43, I talked to Plamen Ivanov, the executive chairman of iIntro. If you missed it, it's well worth going back into the archives and having a listen. One of the things we talked about was a way for recruiters to shift the conversation with prospects away from fees and make it all about value. iIntro has created a tool called the Bad Hire Calculator that you can show to your prospects that proves to them that your recruitment service will save them potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. When you can do that, the exact fees you charge almost become immaterial, because you've proved that you will save the client the most money in the long run. If you'd like to add this tool to your arsenal, you'll be pleased to know that I've partnered with iIntro, and they're offering a 25% discount to listeners of the Resilient Recruiter podcast. All you have to do to claim this discount is book a free consultation and mention my name or this podcast. Just go to recruitmentcoach.com recruitmentcoach.com/retained. Follow the instructions and iIntro will take care of the rest. That's recruitmentcoach.com/retained. I'd love to go even deeper here. So obviously the first thing you said was recognition, praise, and celebrating the small successes, not just the billings, and creating that culture where, you know, it is that achievement culture because everyone is focused on, on those wins, which is fantastic. And you said you do these sales meetings every 2 months. So you're doing this 6 times a year?
Yeah, we do those 6 times a year, and
Yeah.
then on top of that, we do. No, I guess some of the nicer things, we do what we call company conferences, which are essentially jollies, and we've done over 40 overseas trips in 17 years, and
Wow.
we take everyone. So we take our accounts, admin, and sometimes I hate to say it, as some of us have got older and more kids, we're the ones not going, and it's the younger folk going. But the way we've set those up was we used to do 4 a year, then we reduced it to 3. And I'll come on later to, we might do 2 or 3 now because we've got a much more spread of people around the country. But we set targets, and depending how well we do, depends where we go. So, when we've done well, we've been to New York twice, Dubai twice, LA, Miami, Las Vegas, Boston. Good. We do 5-star Europe, not so good 3-star Europe, and then we've had a few times when we've ended up in Newcastle, Bournemouth, Brighton, and even London. But we like the idea that everyone goes. That kind of like we celebrate each other's successes. And we went through times actually when we were challenged on that because we took a newbie to Rome with us, and he decided it was a good idea when we landed after the plane, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Thursday, that he'd down like half a bottle of vodka.
Oh no.
And then he was just on a different plane to everyone else, and everyone was like, "Why are we taking these newbies when they've, not built anything for the company?" And we put in qualification for it, and actually we quickly came away from that because we remembered the reasons we did it was to together celebrate this success. And actually we now have a yellow and red card system that if you act like a numpty, you can get banned from them, of which I'm glad to say we haven't had to do. We've got a couple of yellow cards. I think I've got one. I've been issued one myself. But yeah, that's how we manage it.
I have to ask now, what did you get your yellow card for?
Yeah, okay. I guess you were going to ask that. So we were away in Dubai, and again, because I've got young children, I often come back like a night early on these conferences. So I had a Friday night flight. In fact, I think it was 1 a.m. in the morning on Saturday morning, and we'd gone out to brunch that day, and then there was after brunch, and then we'd gone on to sort of a balcony bar. So we were all quite merry, and I was kind of in that kind of limbo of waiting for a couple of hours till get the cab to the plane. And we'd gone back to, there was probably about 6 or 7 of us gone back to one of the hotel rooms, and we were playing some music. And I think there was a particular song where there it stops, and then there's sort of the guitar kicks in. I think it might have been Creep by Radiohead. And I jumped up and used the bed to break my fall, and I broke the bed. So that at the next sales meeting, Tom issued me with a yellow card for breaking the hotel
Hilarious.
the
I
hotel
think that's
property.
innocent enough, Mark. I don't think
Yeah, there's yeah.
I was expecting something worse than that to
No,
get a
that
yellow
was
card.
yeah. But
Um,
it's nice, and 40 trips abroad. Again, we have a big thing about when we go away, whoever we come into contact with, whether it's hotel staff, whether it's locals, whether it's people that work in restaurants, we want them to have a better time because we're there. I think early doors, some people treated it a bit like a stag do, like going away, company expensed, all that kind of stuff. Whereas I'm very big on respect. I'm very big on people having manners.
totally.
So we've never been chucked out bars. We've not, been no fights. No one's been done for drugs, anything like that. So
Totally. Do you know, it's interesting because I worked with 3 entrepreneurs who set up their own business that has been hugely successful. And one of the reasons they decided to leave and set up their own firm, they worked for a big, well-known international recruitment business, which I will not name. Um, very successful, good company. But one of the nails in the coffin was they were on an airplane on their way to, on a company trip. The whole, cabin was filled with their colleagues, and they were embarrassed by the behavior of some of these colleagues who were already like, who are already drunk on the plane and treating it like a
Yeah.
stag do, and and being rude to other people on the plane. And they thought, this is not the environment that we they like to have a good time, but it was that lack of respect, and they thought, no, this is not the culture that we want to be part of. So coming back then, I love this idea of your company trip. So everybody goes, but it's based on a team target, like a company target.
Yeah, company target. So we
And
set it.
so you're definitely going to do the trip, but how well you do will determine how expensive the trip is, basically. So if you smash it, you're going to go on a big trip. And if you're like, shit, that was we didn't hit our goal there, it's going to be very much more modest. Is that the
Yeah,
idea?
yeah, 100%. And
Okay.
actually, and it's strange. Like sometimes, like our London office is based, say, by St Paul's, so we have a direct train there down to Brighton, and actually they can be some of the funnest trips. You don't want it to be, but actually, everyone jumps on the train. You know, people that want to drink have a few drinks, and we go out down there, and it's a good time. But yeah, when you're saying, someone just joins the company and they can be flying transatlantic or somewhere in Europe, or we've got so our next one is in a couple of weeks in Bilbao, and
Sorry, and
we've
where?
in Bilbao,
I
so
don't know where that is.
northern Spain,
Oh, okay, nice.
so sort of Rioja country, and yeah, we've got three people going that only joined this year. So it'd be interesting to see. You learn about people in these
I'm
in
sure
these
you do.
situations. So
And is it purely like for fun, or is there training, or like anything that happened? No, it's just for fun.
yeah, just fun.
Okay.
Yeah, we call them conversations. Foolishly when we started it, well,
Because the word conference implies there's going to be, more like what you do at your sales meetings, where there's like speeches and awards and that sort of stuff. But
no,
it's
it's just for fun, and we do things that pull people together on it. This Bilbao one, we've got a tapas crawl for for the first day, and I'm going to look at a couple of things for the Saturday. But it's not dictatorial. People can do what they do. Some people go very cultural, especially when you're either going to a new place, or obviously in Europe, some beautiful old cities, and other people are up all night dancing and enjoying themselves and looking pretty rope in the morning. So, um,
so,
but yeah, they're good fun to do.
I love the fact you take your support staff as well. That is usually it's only the front office that goes, right, and the back office are the you know are left behind. And the argument is, well, it's the consultants who are generating the revenue, and so and I understand that argument, but at the same time, from a company and team perspective, I love the way that you're doing it.
We've heard from, a lot of companies do trips, but we've heard it with a lot of people that joined us saying it was the same six people, that've been there
Right.
forever,
Yeah.
typically freelance, on loads and loads of billings that go every year. And like, where's the fun in that? Part of our enjoyment is taking that person that, we've taken people on their first flights before, or certainly first, when you go to America, or the Middle East.
Wow, that's cool.
Um, so it's a real eye opener, and and we, as I say, like there are a few old fogies like myself here, but when we've done the transatlantic, you suddenly everyone's very conscious of the people that are below 21 and can't have a drink over
Oh, of
there,
course.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's kind of a bit in our DNA. But as I kind of alluded to, like um, in COVID, we had a couple of staff that moved further away. We had to relocate down to Devon during that time, but personal reasons. And it's harder to get everyone, to the same places. So this year we're trying to do a lot more stuff in the UK as well. So
Mhm.
for people where it's a lot, harder to get to, or got more family commitments, they've got those other options as well.
Awesome. I love that. So you're every other month you do the sales meeting. And you say you give like people get promoted or you give like prizes or whatever. What are some of the kind of prizes or things that people can be recognized for?
Well, I suppose a big one for us, and we've just had it last week, is in January we have the awards. So again, hopefully spread from trainee of the year, newcomer of the year, consultant of the year, manager of the year, and we have most valuable person from a sales perspective and most valuable person from a support perspective. And I think back in the day we used to give some vouchers or that kind of stuff. We've done it about 6 or 7 years now. We now put on an awards day, so that day is a full-on day. So the guys last week that won those awards, they had breakfast in a place called Sketch, which is a 3 Michelin star restaurant. They
Nice.
then went and hopefully successfully escaped from the escape room. After that, they then went to the Berkeley Hotel where there's a 5 course dessert menu, like 150 quid a pop.
Wow.
Went and did some virtual reality after that, computer games, running around dark rooms with headsets on. Then went to a fancy cocktail bar, and then we sent them out for a lovely dinner at the end of it. So, literally we send them off at
Wow.
quarter to 9 and they finish up at like 10 o'clock at night. And then we've got one tomorrow, which is an incentive we ran in January and February for people that did the most client meetings and the most face-to-face candidate meetings. So again, just incentivizing those good things that we all know is good for our business. And I won't give it away yet, so they don't know, but they've got a similarly, although probably slightly more abstract day ahead of them for six people that won those incentives. So we just try and do those things to keep the fun aspect, and hopefully keep surprising people really.
Love it. That's awesome. Do you, excuse me, apart from obviously the recognition, the celebration on the day, um, do you keep records of like these awards that people can refer back to as part of the folklore? Like, oh, remember the time when you know Jane had 11 client visits in 1 week or whatever? Is there a record of the kind of mythology at CSC?
Yeah, so all our records live up on the wall. So you've
Great.
got that kind of like Hall of Fame,
Yeah, I
biggest
love it.
quarter, biggest month, most temps out, etc. And then again, going back to another pod that you were mentioning, one of the guys talking about his tech stack, the chap that built over I think $1 million, I think it was, with a lot of automation.
Oh yeah, that was Craig
Yeah.
Paisley.
Uh, so we use our analytics program is Cube 19, which we've
Oh
used for a
yeah,
long time.
cool.
And actually, we've just gone through our first ever in 17 years changing of database. We've moved from RDB access to Bullhorn,
Okay, yeah,
and yeah, I suddenly I lost Cube. I lost my at my fingertips. I can look at the records for anything, going back in history, the trends, all the rest of it. And I've been like a lost man for the last 3 months, and we're just getting it kind of relaunched at the moment. So I feel like I'm getting my site back currently.
oh
But yeah,
yeah, that's important. Love that. And so do you have with Cube 19, is it like live real time metrics on display or
yeah. So we have
yeah,
Cube TV, which every time someone does a placement, plays a nice song of their choice, all that kind of stuff. It has the
yeah,
leader tables for whatever you want to put it into there. But yeah, you go on, it's probably got a 30 to 45 second delay from Bullhorn, or access as we had back in the
yeah,
day. So, but I love looking at it for kind of what you mentioned, which is looking at those records and thinking like, cool. Do you know what is the most interviews we have with clients in a week, on a
yes.
month, or a quarter? And I don't catch them all. And there's a lady in the organization called Emma who we're kind of growing into being more of an expert with it. But yeah, I love that. Celebrate everything you can. Anniversaries. I say the small wins, the big wins. I kind of feel where other companies focus on all the billings. We've got a sales board. Everyone knows how much everyone bills. So you don't really, although we do have that our sales meeting, you definitely have the year to date board, and whoever's at the top will definitely get some cheers and a nice round of applause. But I'm like, praise the good habits you want to see, praise
Absolutely.
what you want people to repeat, and try and make, even if you're taking your first steps in the job, try and make that time enjoyable, because we all know that's the hardest time getting into it. And that's why people's, lose so many staff that, and we have done as well, that don't stay that long, because it's tough getting into recruitment. It's you haven't got a degree in it. I know there is a degree now, but it's not like being an accountant that can prepare you for it. You kind of suss someone out for their personality, their cultural fit, and then you go, come on, let's see what we can do together. So yeah,
Absolutely.
making it more enjoyable is a big part of them getting through that time.
Absolutely. 100% agree. It's interesting. We run a coaching program for entrepreneurs who want to grow, who already have a seven-figure business. They want to grow to eight figures, called Apex. And my co-host of that, or fellow coach for that program, is Joel Slenning. And he grew his previous business to 16 million and then sold it. And now he's doing that again, but bigger and faster, basically. Um, he said that a public display of the metrics, now they didn't have Cube 19, it was more of a system they built themselves, but it was a similar idea. Um, he said that he believes more than anything else they did was responsible for massive increases in performance, because people managed themselves and motivated themselves through just that friendly competition with each other and wanting to see themselves higher up with some of these metrics. And he then didn't need to really do much to enforce KPIs. They just did it themselves out of natural, you know, desire to improve and so on. So I think it's smart what you're doing. Question that something you mentioned earlier is the support you give people around their health care and their mental health. Could you say more about why you set that up and how it actually works?
Yeah, I guess it's something that evolved over time, and I think let's face it, millions of people said it before. There's stigmas about it. Um, a lot of people don't understand it. Say, my wife has never gone through anything like that, so kind of just she's kind of old school, saying just like the kind of battle through it, get on with life. But I think again, because we've had a lot of staff work for us a long time, they do, some of them at least do tend to open up. So when we found people that we think are happy go lucky, in a great place, and you find out, hang on a sec, they're not, and you try and help them, you try and help them yourself. But actually, if you go back, to when the business was new, we didn't have many tools in our toolbox. Yes, we're trying to make good decisions, but there's just so much more information out there about what helps people when they get in a bad way. Plus, obviously, the professional help is a big change. So everyone in the company has healthcare that chooses it. Some people have had healthcare from other providers before, so don't take us up on it. And other people, there are some that don't choose it. Um, but you've got access 24/7 to phoning up someone, getting advice, and hopefully seeing a therapist if needed. The point I was making earlier is where I think we go a step further, because I'm sure a lot of companies do that, is if people aren't covered because of pre-existing conditions. And often you might have someone here 3 or 4 years, and then you find out, oh right, you know you're on antidepressants, or you've suffered um from this mental health condition for a long time. They can't get help. So we pay, we've said we'll pay up to £1,000 initially to help that person, to get that person help, because sadly, if we go on the NHS, like, the waiting lists are just colossal. And actually,
Totally.
with the change in the government stance, like if you take something like depression, they're now advising cognitive behavioral therapy is your first step instead of antidepressants, because people's experience of antidepressants is very mixed. So
Yes.
that's brilliant, but they just haven't got enough people to support the people that need it. So,
Yes.
so yes, we're in a privileged position, and it's great that we can offer that. But I do feel sorry for the people that don't have that, and can't have it. But it's still a big thing, and especially for us guys, because we're just not as good at it, opening up and talking to people and saying I need help. And we only typically do it when things are really, really bad. So one of the things we try and do, and our staff have pushed us for this, which is great, but it's just keep talking about it. Keep talking about it so people feel comfortable, so people are more likely to come to you and say that I need help, or we can spot the signs. and we can go and say that, are you okay? Do you need help? These are the things that you can go to. Plus, there's a lot of things that advice you can give people to help themselves. Exercising, getting out in nature, eating well. Not taking narcotics. Drink is often, dare I say, us older people, if you get into a bad place, you have a drink. That's not always the best idea. All those kind of things. So we just try and support people with it, but we'd still like to do more. And an area that's just growing and growing. I think it's just a it's a modern thing. We don't know how much of it used to be about because it wasn't really looked at. So
This is awesome, Mark. Like, what I'd love to understand is how you promote that conversation, because it is such a I mean, it's better, definitely, but it's still a taboo subject, and people don't want to necessarily admit to their boss that they're suffering from depression or something. And so, because they are worried that that's going to count against them or be looked at negatively. So, um, how do you even make it okay for people to share, when they're not okay?
well, it depends on the person.
Mhm.
And some people are really good at hiding it. So that is tough. I think what we're trying to do is breed a culture where we don't advertise it. We don't say, "Oh, Steve over here is just have been having anxiety and depression and has done some cognitive behavioral therapy and is now a much better place." But we do talk about it in general terms about the amount of people that have sought help and have got better. Um, as I say, some people come to you, but also from a business perspective, in a you know recruitment is target driven. It's very clear how much people bill, how much people contribute to the bottom line of the company. And if someone's in a bad place and we believe in they're a bad place, we will just take the foot off the gas and say that you know for 3 months, don't worry about it. Where you're at, see where you get to. And sometimes because that pressure gets lifted, they actually just start doing a bit better. But it is a tough thing, and it's something that can go on for years. Hopefully, where we're trying to get to is recognize it early, get the help early, and then it won't be as bad. But people live with this
Mhm.
their whole life, so sometimes it's learning the tools to manage those things. But from a personal point of view, you know I've got sort of ghosts in my past. When I was at university and stuff. Just before I went to university, I lost my brother. He was only 19. A few years later, I lost a close friend at university, and I didn't have any help or therapy then, but I used to self harm a bit, that kind of stuff. And I talk openly about these things because I think it's good that people can know that you've kind of been through some rough stuff, and um, I hopefully am the sort of person where I don't wear the weight on my shoulders. So I like to walk in the office with a smile, say good morning to everyone, all that kind of stuff. But people know that you know you can get through these things. So I try and share my experiences, encourage other people to do that. They're comfortable with doing that, and yeah, hopefully, the more people we can get to get help, they will kind of grow by osmosis because people tell their good news stories. Even though a lot are very private and would never reach the surface, if you like.
Wow.
But yeah, it's just if you want to look at it from a purely callous point of view, which obviously we do because it's the right thing to do. I'm sure if someone studied into it, this approach would add to your bottom line. Like, I'm sure even if you were just a heartless so and so, being more caring would add to your bottom line. So I'd really encourage people to follow suit if they're not doing it already.
Mark, that's so powerful. I'm really glad that you shared that. And yeah, it's you're obviously leading by example, and being vulnerable with your own team then gives them permission to open up to you in turn. So yeah, that's amazing. I love that.
I was going to say, I think the point you made earlier, which is recruitment's bad for this because we put so much pressure on people to hit certain targets, and they literally think the thing you said. If I tell my boss, I'm going to get fired. I think that is what you've got to try and take away from people. The
Hmm.
fact that that's not, we're going to try and help you. You've got to help yourself. People. definitely do need to take responsibility for that, because really with mental health, you are the key person that can make the difference.
Mm.
But yeah, you've got to take that fear away from people that it's okay, because if you don't, your performance will just look bad and you'll probably get fired a lot quicker, you know. So but not everyone's built the same way. As I said, if you went to my wife, you'd probably get um, a harsher treatment, I would suggest.
Stiff upper lip.
Yeah.
Um, by the way, if this is something you'd probably enjoy as well, Mark, if people are interested in this topic, I did an interview. It was episode number 31 with Paul Hallam in Australia, called "Protecting Your Team's Mental Health While Scaling Your Search Business." And we actually talked a lot about that, and they've put some really good policies in place there based on experience with team members who were struggling. So check that out. What else do you guys feel like you're doing well? Like, what would you say is an accomplishment that you're most proud of, Mark?
God, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because again, as I kind of said at the beginning, we don't like to blow our own trumpets too much, and also we're conscious that, just around the corner there's a bus coming that's going to hit you, and one of the things I've loved about my journey running the company actually is the challenges. I know people always look at problems as um, an annoyance, but actually it's what makes the job interesting, and you learn from them, as you come up. So I would like to think one of the things that's puts in good stead is we don't think we've got all the answers. That we're always learning. We're not scared to fail. And Mark, I could give you a long list of areas I failed in. But I'd like to think with each one, you take something from it. You know, like one of the things we've got better at recently, as I said, like yes, we've got great staff that have been with us a long time, but we've made a lot of bad hires. And actually, when I look back into why we're making those bad hires, it's because we backed the managers so much. They got really enthusiastic about a person, and actually deep down, I knew that probably wasn't the right person. But because they were so keen and enthusiastic, I'd back them. Whereas I've probably got a bit better at saying that this isn't. I know you really want this person, but they're not right. Let's talk about it. Let's see if we can find that right person. And actually, touch wood, since coming out of COVID, we've made some really good hires. And people that are quite different. We're probably falling into that mistake that probably a lot of recruitment businesses our size, 25, 30, 40 people, you hire a lot of people like yourself. So you're not learning anything new. There's not different, there are different points of view, but obviously within a narrow stream. So, we've definitely got some great new characters. We're becoming more diverse as far as people's backgrounds, because we are very, dare I say, white middle class, sadly. And Yeah, I think we're getting better at those things. Um, but I'd like to
Amazing.
say that if you look from a work perspective, what we get told we do well by our candidates and clients is the consultative thing. We're not an aggressive company. We're not. We'd stand our ground. We've got a backbone, but we want to work with people. Like our repeat business stats last time we did them, I think we're over 97%. So when we start working with a client, we really want to get to understand them, and we really want a long-term relationship, and we want to see, in an industry where our clients see us sometimes as we're just trying to grab fees, we want to see them as we want to be a partner. We want to be someone that can add value to your business, not just through hiring great people, but through that, open, honest relationship. Because in our world, our clients, we're construction. We don't actually recruit anyone that actually builds anything. It's all management. So actually, finding them brilliant people is the greatest service they can employ. They just don't always treat us like that. So that's where
Hmm.
that's where we try and get to. So
All right. So let's park this for a second, because I definitely want to turn back to this partnership idea, because it's something I feel is really, really important. Um, But first, like you mentioned that you have a long list of failures that have actually been learning experiences.
yeah,
What can you think of one in particular that you think like looking back over the ups and downs of building this business, what would you do differently?
cool. It's one of those amazing things when you look back. So with 2005 recession hit, 2008. again, a great learning experience, but that was great for us because we were very permanent driven, and that made us much more successful on the freelance side, which is now 50% of our business. So
Brilliant.
um, I learned definitely a lot through that experience. One of our struggles has been actually. So you mentioned at the beginning, you know, we've got 3 offices. We don't anymore. We closed 2 during lockdown, but we didn't make any staff redundant because obviously we were already set up. We already had people remote, and actually 2 of our most successful managers work 4 days a week. One does it from Devon. Bless
Wow.
her. She comes up every 3 weeks. Again, talk about people that can do things I can't. What they've achieved is amazing. Um, but so we didn't expect COVID, but actually, strangely, we were kind of ready for it. But when we tried to open up our regional offices, and we did it through our people, so we had people that wanted to relocate, and they came to us and said, "Look, I want to open an office." Um, really underestimated how hard that is. They were one person going on their own, hiring trainees because that's what we did then. So, people had never done recruitment. Very, very difficult gig for them, and we underestimated that massively. And when I look back at it, a lot harder for them than us. We obviously supported them as best we could. We visited the offices, we talked a lot about it, but that is a really tough gig. You go into a new patch where, yes, you've got overlap with clients, but you're dealing with new offices or new divisions or brand new clients because there's local people there. That was a massive learning experience for me. And hopefully one day when we're in a position to stretch out again, um, I would definitely send at least a pair of very experienced people, to do that. Because again, I think the sanity, those guys being on their own, that's a tough gig. I've always had Tom, we're 50-50. I've kind of never been on my own. But yeah, that was a big, big learning experience for us.
Absolutely. I can imagine. The companies that I've seen who have done that successfully have, first of all, they started building that branch in advance, but from their original head office. So they started building the client base, building the candidate base, and then going up and doing trips, basically, right, to see people face to face in order to prove that there is a market here and we've got a foothold. And then they took at least one, if not a couple of team members with them who were up for that and wanted to relocate and do something different and have that excitement. And then already a team kind of transplanting themselves into that office, and that seems to be the formula.
Yeah. I wish someone had
Um,
told me that when we first did it. But it wasn't the getting the work was the hard bit. It
yeah,
was it was the management and development of the people
yeah,
people come into a London office, there's a lot of people there. You can almost learn by osmosis by just listening
right.
to people. Whereas you've
Yes.
got one person, to learn off, and um, you know, you got fresh faced again, taking people without recruitment experience. It sounds obvious when I say it, but sometimes you have to make those mistakes to learn from it. And we didn't want to shut those offices, but obviously when COVID hit, scary times, which actually in retrospect haven't been quite as scary as we thought they would do from a business perspective. Not forgetting the human cost for a second, but again, another big learning experience. But I think I mentioned to you before, there was a part of me that quite enjoyed everything being thrown up in the air. I'd done the same thing for 15 years, and actually getting to reassess it and to relook at it rather than you're just constantly doing the day to day that you do. Actually, there were definitely some pluses that came out of that.
Yeah, for sure. Agree 100%. Same in my business. So let's talk about partnering with clients then. What does that mean to you? Like, what is the type of relation, or like, what are the expectations that you set with clients in terms of deciding, is this actually even a company we want to work with or not?
Well, a lot of that is how the individuals act. Yes, you can look at clients that, in our world would do attractive projects or have an attractive culture or good reputation. But some of them just that aren't in that space. Some of them have quite powerful HR teams, and they kind of don't want to partner. but you'll find individuals in there that that do. So for us, a lot of it's that personal relationship, but also it's about them, us learning from them what's important, and then bespoking our offering, to them. I would say some examples that we weren't expecting was, 4 times uh, in our sort of history, we've been asked in house. We've never pitched that. We've never sold it. Um, we did it once in the Middle East. Oh, sorry, twice in the Middle East, and we did it obviously in the UK. Um, but we had them. They came to us with a problem. And I remember the one that I was most keenly involved in said we need to hire 100 people in a year, permanent people. We don't know how we're going to do it. And we end up having a conversation. And by the end of it, I was like, oh my God, we're kind of ending up in house here. This is a bit weird. And we end up hiring, I think, 396 permanent people for them in 2 years,
Wow.
half of which were in Europe and half of which were in the UK. And we'd done a tiny bit in Europe before, but never really. Um, and and we still got a very good relationship, obviously, with that company after they finished their growth bits, and we've gone back to do their search work and their contingency recruitment. But God, what a learning experience for me to be in a proper, you know, it was a 2 billion going on £3 billion company, really smart people. It's like the best training I've had to see how they managed that. But yeah, I think it was because of our approach. I think it was because we're consultative. Obviously, we had a track record with them, but being honest, it wasn't massive. Um, the particular division of this company, I think we'd made like 13 placements with, and suddenly there we are. And like all things, we undercooked it by miles. I think it started with me and one other person on this account, and I think we ended up with 7. And we probably could have grown it more than that, at peak. But yeah, I think that's it. I think a lot of it does come to the fluffy words, but if someone trusts you, will take on your opinion. And also, we spend a lot of time training our consultants to be able to conduct those one-to-one meetings. And we took this from Hill McGlynn, which became Randstad. They had something called Aid and Fads at the time,
What
but they
was it
wouldn't.
called?
It's called Aid and Fad. So it was field assessment day and assessment interview day, I think.
Okay.
Um, and what it meant was, so when I got to Hayes as fresh-faced 21-year-old that had no idea about recruitment at all, they took me out to see Orange, the telecoms company, the first
Yeah.
week. And my boss said, right, does that kind of make sense to you? Do you get that? And I was then out seeing clients on my own, you know, within my first week. I'd never done a proper job before. And I was like, at the time, I thought, this is brilliant. Look back now and I think I'm so cringy. I remember I went to a meeting with L'Oreal, and the three HR ladies just ripped me to shreds because I just didn't know anything. And I thought, I never want to feel that way again. So what we do is, before we let someone go out on their own, so they always be assisted, they have to pass basically like an internal driving test to show they've got competency in doing those things. So it can take some people a long, long time. We'd aim to do it sort of within 3 months. But that's our quality standards are high, and even when they pass that, a lot of the time they'd come out with someone more senior, depending on what it's doing. So it's not a mistrust thing, but it's a benchmark for us, saying, like, if you're going to have a
Mm.
face to face, which is, we all know, is where you really build up that understanding, knowledge, and relationship. We want to make sure people do it well. That's been something we took from our old firm that has put us in very, very good stead. And I think has then lent on to the fact that you can do this partnership, that you can be open and honest. We're not always going to be able to fill every role, but we can come back and say to the clients that, why is this not happening? What can we do about it? Um,
This is brilliant. I'm sad that I've only just discovered this at the very end because we could do a whole session just on this because I think it's really smart. Um, so obviously to be able to win such a big piece of business like that, 100 placements in a year, 300 in 2 years, full-time dedicated team with some of those consultants working in-house with the client, for the client and so on, that requires a really good consultative solution sales approach. And the fact you've got this assessment what was it? Field
Oh,
assessment day?
we call them the CIA, which is candidate. Um, uh, forget. So it's a candidate assessment day or whatever it is. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. So you've got your CIA day. Um, what's the criteria for passing? Like when you're evaluating
Yeah.
somebody's performance at conducting a one-to-one client meeting, what what's the scorecard look like?
It's a good question. So scorecard's quite long. Obviously, you get points for information, but that's the minority.
Hmm.
The big scores are on type of questions you ask, listening out for leads, understanding, summarizing, being able to set a good action plan where you've really got to grips with what that candidate or client really wants, getting them to agree to that, and it's kind of setting your way forward. So although a lot of those meetings are fact finds, actually that would probably be, I'd guess, 30% of the scores. It's the skills to be able to do it. And sometimes we go to, we said we can't pass people because they've gone to see a client or a candidate that's just far too nice. So there's no challenge in it, and we've said, look, you have passed, but we can't score you on that one because they were just such a nice lady or man
Oh,
that,
you mean the client,
yeah,
the client or candidate was too nice to them, so they didn't
yeah,
get really
they,
challenged.
they couldn't show their skills on it. So then we
Right.
say, like, right, we unfortunately going to have to ask you to go to another one, which I imagine can be pretty deflating for the person that's come out of the meeting knowing they've smashed it, and then told you got to go and do another one.
That was too
Um,
easy. Weird.
yeah,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
but they say, was it a great seafarer was never made on calm seas? So, and we've probably had other ones where the client's been an absolute nightmare, and the person thought, I'm never going to pass this, and actually they've done well with managing all of those objections and everything else that's happened. But we show them the scorecard before they go in, so they
Yes.
know what they're going to be scored against. And my experience is people focus too much on the information they're trying to get and not
Yeah.
the way they're conducting it.
Absolutely. Uh, so you have a version of that for the client conversation and a version of that for the candidate
That's
conversation.
correct. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Excellent. And which leads me actually to a question I should have asked you right at the beginning. What is your business model? Are people doing a 360 role, or do you have it split with recruiters and sort of salespeople, or how does it work at CSC?
So traditionally we're all 360,
Yeah.
but we have had, we are kind of growing into resources where our business has changed after the last few years. And this was like, considering how small a business we were, it took us a long time to change into this because we were talking about it years ago. But going into key verticals. So although we're experts in what we do and we feel like we know our market really, really well, putting people actually into discipline verticals. So we're going through that transition. So we've got quite a number that have been working in those verticals a couple of years now. But we that gives us the freedom to bring in a resourcer that can then move into that world. But in the main, it's a 360, a 360. But we what drives it is the person we take on, their desire, their skill set. So we've just got a chap starting in a few weeks who's going to come in as a resourcer. That's what he's done, but that suits his personality. The one thing I would say with us, which I haven't found at other places, but I'm sure other companies do, is being called a resourcer or a delivery consultant doesn't restrict your career growth. For us, you can go up all the levels, all the bandings if you focus on that. If you're very good at just bringing in brilliant candidates, that's the hardest thing in our world. So we're like, why would we restrict that? So yes, they typically start as a junior, but they could get to any level, within the scale. We don't have one, but they could even become a manager if they wanted to manage a team of resources. So for us, it's just a different route and suits a different skill set.
So, what would be the career progression then for resourcer if they were really smashing it and you wanted to push them on?
Well, I guess that's the thing. Like, with recruitment, you can be called a trainee, a recruitment consultant, a senior consultant, a principal consultant. Like, yes, there's more pressure to be a role model. Yes, you get more involved in probably the wider how the companies run and stuff like that. But the job's the same. It's the same job we do. So it would be the same with level of the resourcer. It would just be called a different thing. So you could be called a resourcer, then you become a consultant, a senior, a principal. Our model is that on the permanent side, we share fees. So if you bring in a candidate, someone else places them, as long as you've interviewed them, referenced them, done work on their CV, you get 50% of that fee. Um, and the nice thing is salaries keep going up is fees are pretty big nowadays. So to hit the targets we need to go through those levels, it's actually not too difficult if you're a resourcer. And as I say, if you bring in brilliant candidates, they will get placed. So it depends on
Interesting.
so people that are a bit more nervy around the candidate side, or they might see it as they don't want the pressure of that side. It's actually quite a good route. Whether they can get the fulfillment for it long term, that might change. But with the verticals, we very much can then coax them into being consultants, hopefully in time. But it is a route that's an option.
Fantastic. Mark, this has been so fun and really, enjoyed talking to you. So thank you so much. And you've really delivered today. You've over delivered against my expectations in terms
Good
of
to hear.
like real actionable insights, strategies, and I'm very grateful. Thank you.
That's okay. It's been enjoyable.
I'm glad. Have an awesome day. See you later.
All right, you take care, Mark.